I have the video this week. I know I just did a video, but I watched a movie that I really wanted to talk about. So I'm going to talk about the movie that I watched. It was kind of an odd one. I bought it a while ago and hadn't watched it yet, but had to really hunt it out. So it was kind of like, okay, I really should watch this one soon. And I'd watched another new movie that I got, and it was a similar theme. So I thought, okay, I'll watch this one as well. Anyway, before we get there, remember, if you want to support us, there are a couple of ways to support us. There is our shop where we have books and writing services. There is our Redbubble shop where we have over 100 designs. And if you want to support us without spending any money, that is entirely fine. Like, subscribe, comment, and share. So, what is the movie we're talking about today? Well, so I watched another film. One of the things about me, I like vampire films. I don't like horror. I like vampire films. And so I have lots of vampire films. So I watched the newest Dracula, the French one, and which was, okay. It was okay. It was sort of a fever dream, but it was okay. It's fine. But then I watched this other movie that I had bought a while ago, and I thought, I really have to watch this. This one also has Dracula in it. And Casanova. Okay, I've just said Dracula and Casanova in the same film. Okay, instantly you're either going to go, okay, I need to see this, or that just sounds too weird. Okay, but I don't know anyone else who's ever watched this film, heard of this film, and I need to talk about it. So you're getting it. The movie is called Story of My Death, and the director is Albert Serra. He's a Spanish director, and this is a very unusual film. So it's a long film, and I actually watched it over a couple of days because I was watching it sort of in the evening after work, and I'd get too tired and I'd stop because it's a very slow, very meditative film. I actually don't think it really harmed it to watch it across that time scale. I'll probably rewatch it all in one hit again, properly. But I really don't think it actually harmed the film that much because I watched it for as long as I could pay attention to it, and then I stopped, and then I'd pick it up again and finish it off. Why did I watch it like that? Because it's a very, very narrative light film. Okay, so this is a film that I don't have many that are very like this, because this does not have much narrative. Not at all. We open the film with actually this big feast. Outdoors, it's night, a whole load of people. It's clearly very Italianate, and it's a very people are talking. They're talking about various different things. There's a writer there, and it's very sensual. It's extremely sensual, but it's extremely 18th century. As we go on, we meet Casanova properly. Casanova, he's talking to a friend as they're looking through books and deciding which ones they want to keep and which ones they don't. We follow Casanova around. Casanova at this point is an older man. When he's got his wig off, he's bald. He's old. He's still got his face made up, but he isn't always, you know, sometimes he's not perfectly shaved because he's at home. We watch him eat, we watch him talk to people. We have a very scatological scene, which would probably, if you're going to get put off by anything in this film, it is that scene. He talks to the writer from the beginning of the film. He has an encounter with a maid. He talks to his servant. Not a lot. People talk about things, ideas. It's very bright. It's very there's an opulence to it. It's very clean. This is that all the spaces, they're very large spaces, and they're beautifully made, but they're tidy. There is a spareness to them, which is, you know, it gives it that lightness. Halfway through the film, so that's about an hour. There's about an hour of that. Halfway through the film, Casanova and his servant are in the Carpathian Mountains. He's traveling again. And they go and they stay in this farmhouse. And still he's continuing to do what he's been doing. He and the servant have encounters with either the maids, the servant with the maid women, and he with the daughter of the house. It's, you know, he's still approaching everything in his own particular way, except that this environment is very different. This is more wild. It's in the forest. It's in the mountains. There is a lake. And everything about the place, he is still in his 18th century wig, painted face. And yet you have signs that he is, whereas in the beginning of the film, he was in his element. He's older, he is not, you know, in his prime. He is, you know, seducing women who are perhaps not the kinds of women that he was seducing in his prime, but he's still doing his thing. Here, it's darker. He isn't quite in his element. He's telling his stories, but they're not landing in the same way, because these people, this means nothing to them. This is an alien world to them. And you can see how much that they are moving into a new place. The daughter is wearing a sac dress or a robe à la française, except she's wearing it without the proper undergarments. So she has no stays on, she has no panniers on. She is wearing this robe, but it looks more like she's slopping around in a dressing gown, because the robe doesn't have its big formal underpinnings to make the robe sit properly. Also, her hair is natural. It's a very it's everything about where he is. And we never get any explanation of anything. This is a very spare film. Dialogue does not really add to a thrust of narrative. Dialogue is just happening. I mean, it does add to the thrust of narrative within reason, but at the same time, it's not. This is not a film with a really forceful narrative thrust. And so we get this sense that there is a certain decay here and something is changing. And then we see Dracula. Dracula is a force in this environment. He is known to people. We don't need to be told he's Dracula. That's the other thing. The minute you see him visually, He is roughly the same age as Casanova. But everything about him is the opposite. He is a void where Casanova is a presence. And he's malign and sinister, where Casanova is somewhat self-indulgent, yes, but also he's very engaging. Like, I found I liked Casanova. I enjoyed the time we spent with Casanova. And Dracula comes and he seduces or coerces the daughter into coming with him. She becomes a vampire. And then Dracula and the daughter begin to prey upon the household, which includes Casanova and his servant. And that's how it ends. It ends with Dracula killing Casanova. Which is, and you watch it and you're like, what's this about? That Casanova went to the Carpathian Mountains, met Dracula and got killed by him? Is it, like, because that's really the narrative of the story. But this is not a film where you're looking at it for the narrative. The design of this film is exquisite. In Casanova's palazzo or wherever he is staying, there are these beautiful tables full of food, and they look like Dutch masters. The setup of the food, the way that the food looks like a Dutch master. Everything about Casanova's world speaks of enlightenment, of beauty, of opulence, yes, of self-indulgence, because that is what sort of was coming out of the end of the 18th century. You know, people finally got sick and tired of the aristocrats and therefore off with their heads. But at the same time, part of what makes that part of it so engaging is that as much as it is the mundane world, an unenchanted world, Casanova takes enormous pleasure in everything he does. Every single thing that he does, whether it is eating pomegranates while reading, whether it is drinking wine, whether it is taking a dump, everything he does is pleasurable. He engages with life, every aspect of life. And then you get Dracula. And Dracula is malign, and he is oppressive, and he is coercion, where Casanova is seduction, because there's a big difference in seduction and coercion. Casanova, you never get a sense that the women who he is seducing are anything other than consenting and engaged parties. However, Dracula is coercion. When anyone is attacked by the vampires, either Dracula or the daughter of the house, Carmen, they never appear to be willing. This is something that happens against their will. The imagery around once we get to once Dracula is introduced, start to look like Goya's black paintings. Or in particular, there is a moment of a pagan sacrifice. So a bull or an ox is sacrificed. And the way that it is shot, although it's very dark, it looks like Goya's still lifes. There is a grotesqueness to it where the Dutch master inspired food looks appetizing and desirable and luscious and opulent. This Goya-inspired sacrifice looks grotesque. It looks very dead. As interesting, because the Dutch masters can paint meat, but it doesn't look very dead. Whereas those still lifes, they don't look dead. They look like plenty. Whereas Goya's still life, it looks dead. They look like dead fish. They look like a dead lamb head. And the sacrifice looks like a very large dead animal. The black paintings also come into this. There's one of the black paintings has witches, and they look like they are, or one of the figures in the painting looks like it's actually biting their victim on the chest, which is how Dracula bites people. So that the filmmaker is basically saying this is images. We're not telling this story via a strong narrative thrust. We're telling this story via images. And I think obviously he's a Spanish filmmaker, so obviously Goya is going to be if you want that big, dark, maligned character to your film, then the black paintings of Goya are definitely going to be something to emulate for there. Because looking at this, like to look at it, the description of it is that this is a look at the crossover between the 18th and 19th century, the age of reason and enlightenment, into the dark, oppressive, violent world of the Romantics and the 19th century. And you really get that shift. By the time Dracula moves through, Casanova actually appears less and less, because this world no longer has a place for him. He doesn't fit in it anymore. There is nowhere for him to be. His enthusiasm starts to look ridiculous as this oppressive, superstitious, enchanted world takes precedent, which is really fascinating. Now, I was interested in this because after watching this and thinking about this, I thought, oh, this really does illustrate a lot of the reason why we don't do a lot of 19th century books on this channel. And there is a reason. And I'm not a big fan of romantics. None of us are big fans of romantics. Certainly not Her Ladyship. And I think it is partly that tone shift in this film is a really good visual and auditory descriptor of what the issue is. Because I noticed this looking at all of the discourse around Wuthering Heights, and I put that in quotation marks because it's in quotation marks, the Emerald Fennell movie that's out, and everybody, all the girlies are losing their freaking minds about Wuthering Heights. It's not Wuthering Heights. It's Emily Bronte meant this and Emily Bronte meant that, and it's like, oh, honey, Emily Bronte was a virtual shut-in Yorkshire woman who was the daughter of clergymen. I'm pretty sure she didn't mean quite as many things as you're giving her credit for. I'm sorry, not sorry. Because Wuthering Heights is sort of a very good example of the kind of 19th century thing that I don't like. I'm not a big fan of Frankenstein. I'm not a big fan of Jane Eyre. I'm not even a big fan of Jane Austen. You know that. her ladyship has got herself in big trouble over, you know, not being a fan of some of these things. We're not fans of the Gothic. And because what do those things really represent? That is sort of the question. And they represent the same sorts of things that Dracula in this film represents. They represent repression. They represent superstition. They represent coercion, coercive love, coercive sexuality, rather than seduction. Seduction is not a bad thing. You do have to be seduced. Pleasure is seductive. That's why it is seductive, because you voluntarily. Seduction is an interplay between two forces, one who acts in a particular way and one who responds. It's a dance. Coercion is not a dance. Coercion is never a dance. Coercion is power and force and violence. And the 19th century, the Gothic, even the Romantics are not particularly seductive. They seem to be very disinterested in whether or not the audience, in terms of some of the Romantics, they are trying to trigger a response from you. They're trying to force a response from you, which is feels coercive, which is part of the reason I don't like it, because I don't like being manipulated. I do not like, oh, you made me cry. I didn't actually care about them, but you managed to push those buttons and you made me cry, which is why I don't watch Disney, because they can do that. I also, Spielberg can do that. I don't like that because they don't deserve it. They never earned that in the first place. It was never earned. It was you pushed the music up and you did this and you did big eyes and I actually really resent that because it is coercive. It's coercive. It's a way of engaging with your audience because you don't trust them to come with you. You don't trust them to be part of that dance. All you're saying is, you are going to come with us. It's like being beaten over the head with a stick. And I'm not a fan of that. So we don't do a lot of 19th century stuff because it is emotionally manipulative. It is coercive. And coercion is always violence. Coercion is always violence. It doesn't need to be a violent topic to be violence, because you are forcing me to react in a way that I actually don't want to. That part of me will resist it. Whereas one of the biggest shocks for me of 18th century stuff was how much I responded to it, because it doesn't coerce you. It's that dance, it's that seduction, it's Mozart, it's a Handel opera, it's Alexander Pope's poetry, which I didn't expect to really love Alexander Pope, but he offered me this thing that was opulent and beautiful and said, here, come on, you interested? And I responded, not because he was trying to force me to do something, but because he offered something that was so beautiful, so seductive, that I really desired to engage with it. And that is what what Casanova represents. He's the seducer, whereas Dracula is the violence. And once you have violence in one position, then violence becomes the default. Violence spreads out and out and out and out, because it takes violence to yourself to repress your natural desires. It takes, and to crush yourself into a particular social mold. It takes violence to yourself to engage with things that you know are manipulative, where you know this is just trying to manipulate me. This is not actually engaging with me, but this is all that's on offer, so I will go with it. And once you are doing violence to yourself, to your own emotional life, to your own psychic life, it doesn't take much for violence to come outward. And we see that. We see the daughter, once she has become a vampire, once she has once she has had violence enacted upon her by Dracula, she becomes violent. She takes she vampirizes one of her maids. Dracula does the other one. She beats and kills her father. There are a lot of different ways in which her violence is a contamination of the person that she was. The violence done to her spirals out. She then enacts it on other people. Once you start committing violence once violence is committed to you, it can become that, right, then you become violent. And so that is a really interesting aspect of that. No one ever behaves in a out of character way or a distorted way through their interactions with Casanova. They may behave more liberally, more freely, especially sexually, but they don't act out dark, malevolent, harmful ways, because Casanova is taking pleasure in things, and pleasure begets pleasure. He's also not doing it to harm people. So it is a really interesting little film. It's quite long. It really takes the idea of film. This is film. This is not a translation of a book. This is not, a play. This is film. What can we do with film? How can the image mean the most? So in some ways, it's very much like watching a silent film, although it has dialogue. The dialogue is minimal, and you are primarily using the visual image and the music to inform your narrative, inform your reading of the narrative, because a lot of the dialogue does not help in terms of pushing the narrative forward. Or even, nobody says, I am Dracula. Nobody says, oh, look, the vampires have come down and they're killing, nobody says anything like this. These things go unremarked on. You have to understand them based upon your reading of the visual. And I think that might be something that is somewhat off-putting for some viewers. It's very much like the film House of Pomegranates, which has, I think, even less narrative, but just gorgeous visuals. It has some of the most amazing. That movie has some of the most amazing visuals. So it is a pure film in that respect. It is avant-garde. Is very much an auteur film. It's not a Anglo-centric way of viewing the world. It is a film with a lot of just silences and ordinary things happening. And I think that how you respond to that is part of how the film works. It's as much asking you to respond to it as follow the narrative. Does this make you uncomfortable? Is this too much? Is this too far? I think if you like the Herzog film Mystery of Casper House, I think it's called, you would probably be fine with this film. In fact, Herzog has a similar sort of quiet non-narrative thrust, driving the narrative through dialogue, things like that. If you look at something like Aguirre or even Nosferatu, although that has more overt narrative, The Mystery of Casper House, I haven't watched Heart of Glass yet. That's on my list. But I do find watching films from a non-Anglo-centric perspective quite interesting, because we are the Anglo-centric film world is so very, very, very beholden to American filmmaking. And then when you move out of that and move into other people from other cultural backgrounds, where that is not the primary narrative focus or the primary narrative way of engaging, you get these very different films. You just have to sort of sit back and see if you like it. If you don't like it, totally understand. So I've sort of brought you another weird film. It's definitely well worth watching if you think you can manage 2.5 hours of not a lot happening. Because it's not a short film. It is a very long film. Not a lot happens. But it doesn't happen beautifully. So, and it's more meditation and a clash of philosophies than an actual narrative. So, if that seems like it would appeal to you, try The Story of My Death by Albert Serra. And I will be back again at some point when I have another film, or when we haven't read a book, or when Her Infernal Majesty hasn't watched a play. We did warn you about this. I will be back again later. Auf Wiedersehen. If you would like to support this channel, come across to the Black Cockie Press website, www.blackcockiepress.com.au, where you will find books and other writing services to help with your writing.